Pooja, mainly the Abhishekam, or the holy bathing of the Shiva Linga. The whole tradition of worshipping the Shiva Linga, there are different versions or different perspectives of looking at it. Some of them from the Puranic point of view, from the point of view of the epics, and some from the spiritual point of view. So Shivaratri typically was the last weekend, and Shivaratri, because Lord Shiva is considered the deity without Anadi is the term used, one who doesn't have a beginning. So there is no specific date of birth that we mark as Shivaratri. Rather, there are different significance of this particular day. One, the planetary positions are such that they are quite conducive for spiritual practices. So Shivaratri, unlike other celebrations, are much more internalized in nature than more expressive. Typically, most of our celebrations would be when or where we would try to involve our senses or kind of satisfy or pacify our senses with good food, colorful things, eyes, nose, ears, tongues, all quite well entertained. Rather, Shivaratri is such wherein here you're trying to draw inwards and not really externally celebrated big time. Of course, there are different traditions, they do it in different ways. And I must say, two things that we are most attached to is sleep and food. We may not agree that I'm so attached to it, but when we actually don't have enough of it, our body, our physiological, biological composure is such that our body will start reacting to it, telling, I need more of it. Even the dear and near ones, most precious things, start taking the second spot when it comes to sleep and food. So Shivaratri is a day when you try to exercise that, not really punish ourselves, rather to once in a while tell our mind that it's not your way always. Sometimes even I have a say. When I feel that we should not have food, we will not have food. You may try to work around it, but it is not possible. Something like that. So Shivaratri, the whole idea of taking a vow is that. And the interesting thing was last weekend, the Shivaratri day, the satsang was in the New York ashram. So it was from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. And it actually started with dinner at 6:30 p.m. So we're talking about taking a fast, but it started with dinner. But many of them chose to fast. Many people have health issues, etc. Anyway, so Shivaratri is typically the day. There are different aspects to it. One, it is mentioned wherein the Shiva Purana, wherein the divine makes the sankalpa for creation, and the creator, Brahma, comes into being. Vishnu, the sustainer of whatever is being created, comes into being, and they ask the divine, how do you look like? You are beyond physical description or physical perception. How do you look like? And it seems at their request, did the divine establish itself in form of a huge, long, unending pillar of fire, stretching all the way up, all the way down. And there are episodes wherein they explain how Brahma and Vishnu went in search of the end of the pillar. But in any case, it is believed Shivaratri is the day where the divine manifested in the form of this unending pillar. And there are other versions wherein they say Shivaratri is the time when Shiva and Parvati, Shiva and Shakti, the aspectless form of the divine and aspectful form of the divine united together. And there is another version or another aspect to Shivaratri wherein they say the Lord of Moon, the moon god, Chandradeva, was absolved of his curses on that particular day with Mother Parvati intervening. So that is another day as marked as Shivaratri. So anyway, one thing consistent with all of these is that this is the day to focus on the principles behind the various practices and rituals that we do. Shivaratri is more about reflecting within than expressing outwardly. So we will be performing the Shiva Puja on the Shiva Linga. Again, that's another peculiar thing with Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is worshipped in form of the elliptical shape of Shiva Linga. Shiva Linga, there are again two ways of looking at it. One, the epics point of view, the Puranic view, wherein there is this episode wherein there's a sage called Bhrigu. Bhrigu Maharshi is the founder of the astrological system. And Bhrigu Maharshi once needed to have a high-level meeting to discuss something important. And because he has to discuss something important, he wants to meet the top three executives, the trinities, Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. So he goes to their abode to meet with them. And Lord Brahma is ever in a state of meditative mood, wherein he always is in recitation of the Vedas. The four heads are depicted as if the Vedas flow from Brahma's mouth. So he's ever in that state of meditative state. And then Vishnu is ever in Yoga Nidra. He's ever in the state of the ultimate union, the sleep state of ultimate union. Nidra translates to sleep. Nidra, because when we are asleep, the best friend of ours comes and stands in front of us, or the person we hate the most comes and stands in front of us, our reaction would be the same, because we would be beyond the physical realm when we are asleep, right? If we react even in our sleep, then there's some problem we have. We definitely need to get some counseling. But typically when we are asleep, we go beyond the physical realm. So Lord Vishnu represents being in the same state, but being completely aware of the surroundings, still not being affected by things around. That's why it's referred to as Yoga Nidra, ultimate state of union, oneness. So Vishnu was also in Yoga Nidra, and even he failed to recognize that Bhrigu Maharshi has visited his abode. And then he goes to Shiva's abode. Lord Shiva is ever in Samadhi, ever in a deep meditative state. Samadhi, the state of oneness. Even he fails to recognize that Bhrigu Maharshi has come. So Bhrigu Maharshi is not very happy about it. And it seems he curses Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Again, the question can arise, can Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu be cursed? They are the trinities. Looking at it from the spiritual point of view, it just depicts how whenever we see the divine in a form can always be limited. But the divine is much beyond that. Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu are they're beyond the form that we limit them to. So when there is a form, there is a limitation. That is the spiritual principle. So all this, the significance of curse, etc. is that. So it seems Bhrigu Maharshi is about to curse them. And Brahma is completely in his state, he's least aware of it. Vishnu is the sustainer. He better be quite smart, else he cannot sustain the creation. So he's quite quite smart. So he kind of pacifies Bhrigu Maharshi. Shiva partially pacifies Bhrigu Maharshi. So Vishnu kind of gets out of the problem. So he's fine. Shiva, on the other hand, he is not fully out of the problem, but kind of out of the problem. He got Bhrigu Maharshi under control. So it seems it is said, because of the curse or the partial curse, Lord Shiva is not worshipped in his form, in human form, like a human form given to him, rather in the form of Shiva Linga. And then Lord Brahma, typically, if you look at it, there are hardly any temples dedicated to Lord Brahma. Again, let us not literally look at it at trivial level, wherein, oh, Brahma doesn't have temple, Vishnu is greater. All of them are one and the same, or different forms of the same aspect. But just when we relate to the divine in a form, it is to remind us that form is ever with limit. The divine is beyond the form. So let us not limit the divine to just one form or to a form alone. So Shiva Linga, that's how he's worshipped in form of Shiva Linga. But looking at it from the spiritual point of view, Shiva represents, so the creation happens, sustenance happens, anything that we create has to sustain and has to end, right? So that is the significance of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. Generation, organization and dissolution. G-O-D. Generation, organization, dissolution. That's how God, the whole concept of God is that everything that we see, God created, God generated, is organized for some time, sustains for some time, and has to dissolve at some point of time. So when you say dissolves, it basically means whatever limitation it has because of the physical form, it goes beyond that and gets to the state of oneness. So Shiva Linga represents that oneness. Oneness, because Shiva Linga, typically an elliptical shape, from any point of view you look at it, there is only the same shape. It is very difficult to say this is the front part of it, back part of it, left side, right side. It is the same everywhere. That is the beauty of circular shapes. There is no side to it. There are only two sides, inside and outside. So we let go of our bonds outside and try to go inside. So that's what Shiva Linga represents. So that's why we will be performing Abhisheka to the Shiva Linga. The Shiva Linga is the form that we aspect Lord Shiva to. So we'll be performing the Abhisheka with water, milk, yogurt, honey, and rose water, clarified butter, ghee. And just last month when we had Sri Ayyappa Pooja, I did explain the significance of each of the 5. So I will spare you of going through the same process. I hope you remember, and I hope you can relate to that. Water and milk represent simplicity and humility. Yogurt teaches us to look for goodness, even in those things those that don't seem good enough. There is goodness in everything. Clarified butter, the long, arduous path that we take, wherein every experience in life we utilize it to let go of one negativity after the other, reaching the state of perfection or state of purity. And then honey, that which ever remains fresh for thousands and thousands of years, more than 2,000 or 2,500 years is what science talks about. So ever remaining fresh, ever enthusiastic, the attitude of a child and a beginner. And then rose water, simplicity and humility of water, at the same time spreading the fragrance of love and compassion. So I'm not going further into it. These are the 5 or 6 qualities that we need to imbibe and offer to the divine. That is the significance of performing the Abhisheka with these liquids. So we will perform the Abhisheka. As I perform the Abhisheka, we will play and sing along with it 2 chants. One is the Lingashtakam, the 8 verses, highlighting the significance of the Shiva Linga, and thereafter Nirvana Shatkam, the 6 verses that 6 verses of liberation. Liberation, it's interestingly named as Nirvana Shatkam. 6 verses of liberation, Nirvana, because Nirvana Shatkam was composed by Adi Shankaracharya. I guess it was composed based on his response to Govinda Bhagavat Pada. Adi Shankaracharya was on a lookout for a guru, and he comes across Govinda Bhagavat Pada. And Govinda Bhagavat Pada asks him, "Who are you?" And that is one question we all like, right? if you're given a chance to tell who we are, we will just utilize the time, or even, best place to go is check out our LinkedIn pages. We try to make it as long, as big, as flowery as possible, right? But Adi Shankaracharya's response was completely different. When he was asked, "Who are you?" he started telling, "I am not this mind, I am not this body, I am not this intellect, I am not my thoughts, I am not my I'm not my mother, I'm not my father, I'm not death, I'm not birth, I'm not my teacher, I'm not the disciple, I'm not the 5 sheets of my body, I'm not the 3 states of my existence, I'm none of these." So there are 6 verses composed based on his response. And after every verse it says, "I'm none of these, then who am I? I'm Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. I'm Chidananda Rupa. I'm the embodiment of the bliss of the Supreme Consciousness. And Shivoham, Shivoham. I'm Shiva, I'm Shiva. I'm that ultimate state of oneness and the ultimate state of oneness." So that's how the verse goes. So we'll chant both of these verses as I perform the Abhisheka. We'll play the verses and chant along, and thereafter we will move on to having few more bhajans after that. After I'm done with performing the Abhisheka, I would request each one of you to come forth and perform Abhisheka on the Shivalinga as we continue with the bhajans thereafter. You will be instructed to come up as we are done with the, as I am done with the Abhisheka. Then we perform the Archana and continue with few more bhajans. Om Amrite Shri Namaha.